People who let their mom count to 0. What happened after? The chase of a lifetime that ended in a red hot posterior. She was bluffing, but only the first time. She started counting to negative numbers. Bold of you to assume that they are alive to tell their story. She reset me to the factory settings. Tried it once. She gave a defeated sigh, then chuckled. Then she said something like, "You're getting too old." That was the day I became a man. I'll never forget my 32nd birthday. Wooden spoon impact. Edit. I see a lot of people asking if I'm Italian, Irish or even Polish. Nope. American. But the art of the wooden spoon was taught through many generations in our family. I'm just thankful I never got the belt. I'll never know. She got to 7 and, being the resident smartest, I said, "Oh cool. Showing off again, mom." That went real well for me. Pussies. My mom started at 0. I'm gonna count again. 5, 4. Half of my respiratory organs were destroyed. I had my sister's Hello Kitty belt imprint left on my ass. Oh lord, she coming. Not my mother, because she rarely disciplined me and my siblings, but my grandma. Oh no. When I went to 0, I got her classic little old Asian lady move, a sock filled with pennies thrown at me at speeds I never thought possible. It hurted. She yelled my name real loud. I woke up in the back of a wagon heading to Skyrim. This is Reddit, not a Ouija board. She's currently on 11125899906842624. I'll let you know if she ever gets there. Everything goes black and the last thing I see is my mother's slipper speeding toward me. I never got in trouble, but my sister did. She let my mother count to 0. She just got shouted at. My sister ran upstairs crying. I used to not know what would happen when I counted to 10. My son has let me get there once, and it ended with me literally wrestling him into his pajamas and him going to bed without getting to read any books. He was very upset, and I felt like a terrible person, but he hasn't let me go past 7 since that day. I let her divide by 0 once. A black hole opened up and all hell broke loose. Heck. Sorry mom. She slapped the soul out of my body and it ricocheted back in me. Moms never get to 0. There's fractions out there you can't even imagine. You know what a switch is? And I'm not talking about Nintendo. You are ducking done followed by my entire name, with emphasis on my middle, followed by an ass beating I still remember 15 years later. My mom counted up, and if I wasn't making moves, she suddenly became a sloth. You better move your butt. 2.5. I was a pussy. I never let her get to 3. Am I the only one whose mom counted to 3? Alright, I'm coming in late here, but this reminded me of the time I went the distance with my mom. My whole life we've rarely argued, and during my entire upbringing we only had a few actual fights, all of which were 100% my fault. The point I'm making is that my mom is a really sweet, genuine person who did an amazing job raising 2 boys on her own. When I was 12 I had a bad day and got home in a mood. I wasn't quite looking for a fight per se, but I was being a crabby, snappy, negative jerk. Mom put up with it for a while and then had enough. I can't recall the catalyst, but she wanted me to do something and I refused. So the count came. 3, 2, and I interjected. 1. There was a stunned silence for a moment and then she looked at me with rage in her eyes. I'm sorry, I pleaded, but I had crossed a line and punishment was coming. She moved so fast, like a blur, and I was frozen. I was taller than her, but she scooped me up, thrust me in a chair and told me to wait there. Her voice had both ice and heat. So how is that possible? She came back with a bar of ivory soap which she jammed into my mouth. It was gross, with high notes of bitter soap taste but also a strange sickly sweetness that made me want to gag. And that's how I know that Dr. Pepper tastes like Robitussin with ivory soap, a splash of prune juice and carbonated water. I think I got grounded as well, but the fear she instilled really did the trick. Weaklings. My mother would count after I was already whooped to give me time to stop crying or I'll be whooped again. This is Alex's mother here posting. I'm posting on his behalf as I counted to 0. He did not survive. No one who let their mom get to 0 is around to tell the tale. The doctor diagnosed her with dyscalculia. 3, 2, 1, 0. The sound of a belt coming undone through the loops of pants frightened me. It wasn't really my mom but more of my dad. He will count from 3 down and when I started being a print I will sit there and stare blankly at him. When he made it to 0 he started to take off his belt and after that, well there is a reason I was the fastest runner in my class. So sad how people in here talk about child abuse with such nostalgia. I gotta say, the last time my mom ever tried to spank me I dove right between her legs, knocked her over, and ran like a ducking wild hog. I guess she realized then that she was too old for this lol. Well I'm currently typing this from my dungeon. Please send help. I don't have much time. Oh wait, here she comes. Help. Note, this is a joke. Please don't call 911. I did get my ass beat with the chancla though. I stupidly said wow I didn't know you could count and she beat the soul out of me. I saw everything that had ever happened in any place ever all at the same time. I saw every great extinction event in reverse and the thunderous slaps had ducking reverb. She beat me like a sexually frustrated teen beats their meat. She hit me so hard I saw new colors. Her grip was like a jaguar's jaws on a gazelle's neck. There was no escape. I got a privilege taken away. After that would come immediate buyer's remorse. I'd do whatever it was she had wanted me to do in the first place. Cry and beg. And I never, ever got her to reverse her decision. My mom's a tough cookie, and it took me way too long to catch on lol. I guess I wasn't exactly the brightest child. Till a lot of people's parents abuse them. Or thrashing with the thickest, heaviest leather belt she owned. Happened all too often. The bruises fade but memories last forever. I have 2 kids of my own now and in 13 years of parenting haven't resorted to violence once. I had 4 bones broken, few bruises and I am missing couple of teeths. Short story time. Raised in an Asian household, near tiger mom all that stuff. Can't even remember what it is exactly I did to set her off but she turns on her usual rage face and starts staring me down. Next thing I know she tells me to go to her room and grab her leather belt and that I have 5 seconds to get it or else it is gonna happen. For the first time in my life, I decided to take a stand. First I told her I didn't want to because I'll just get hurt but the countdown continued and by the time she reached 1 I lay down a flat and calm no. She tried to hide it but I can tell she was absolutely stunned. You know that saying I wasn't thinking that far ahead? If you were to translate that into a facial expression then you'll get her face at that moment. After about another 5 seconds of silence she just told me to go to my room. I learned 2 things a day. It might not always pay off but it's always better to try and stand up for yourself. Lock your doors because the fight ain't ever over. She threw a flashbang into my room then proceeded to whip me with her belt. Did I mention she was military? I'm typing this from the grave. This is what happened. The amount of people in this thread who were abused is truly ducking sad. If your parent ever open hand slapped you in the face or head or struck you with an object and patted they committed felony child abuse in almost every state in America. I was beaten as a kid and there's nothing more pathetic than a parent who can't control their child without beating them. They're half your size. All you've proved is that you're a coward. Asian mom, so you have chosen death. Child abuse happened and life of alcoholism started. You guys got a countdown? I got instant death. It only happened once but she said come here and made me pull down my underwear and pulled my scrot like a chicken thigh skin. I have no idea where she got a flashlight, but she shone it through and said to me if you don't behave, it'll pop one of these little baby eggs you call testicles and you won't have any kids. Needless to say I behaved after that, since I only had 2 balls and really wanted 2 kids. I don't know, I have no recollection of anything after that through the following week. It escalated back from 0 to 100 real quick. WTF. Who counts to 0? Everyone knows when mum counts to 3 life is over. But if she gives you a 2.5 you may have a chance if you move fast. Slapped in the face. Dumped out of wheelchair. Dragged outside by my hair and locked in the front yard for 4 hours in Arizona heat. Told to drink from hose if I was thirsty till my stepdad got home and let me back inside. And helped me up. CPS was called after talking W therapist about it. They did nothing and mom took me out of therapy and filed formal complaints against the therapist. I was 13. It went to 0 once thinking I could be as smart as and I saw the stars and stripes. Never pulled that ever again. My grandma was the sweetest woman in the world until you did something stupid. We grew up in the south and she had this biggest weeping willow tree in the front yard. She would prolong the experience by making us, me and my 2 brothers, go pick our own weapons of torture from the willow tree and clean the leaves off. She called them switches. Often, she would have me go pick the switch from the tree instead of my brothers. I was the youngest. She died when I was only 6 or 7. And I didn't understand that longer willow vines equals more pain. So I'd pick the longest vines possible. Cause I enjoyed the sound they made when I swung them through the air. She could crack those willow vines off your ass like a damn bull whip. If any of us laughed at our brother getting it, she'd always say I'll give you something to laugh about. And proceed to alternate blows between us. We didn't find it funny anymore after that usually. Can someone please explain what is going on? I was an absolute tool when I was about 16. And my mom pulled the counting method on me for the first time in like 10 years. I defied her because I thought I was so cool. She never hit me, but she did start telling me everything I've done to break her heart. And man, I became a better person after that. I hope I'm making her proud. I wish I never hurt her. She is an absolute saint. Do that to my wife. Ends with tickles. She chased me and I pallet stunned her. Array out of bounds exception. She suddenly had buttons for eyes and was the other mother. Some of those kids are probably no longer with us. In Austria mums count to 3. There is a small cemetery next to Vienna. There rest the brave who heard the 3. Player 3 dad enters game. Wielding leather strap. Most memorable was getting slapped. Pulled by my hair into my room. And then locked in for an unknown period of time. They installed a lock on my door that meant they could lock me in. Which they did. Every night. Then they wondered why I had bedwetting problems. My mum once was smacking me with a wooden spoon. She smashed me over the ass so hard it snapped and the head went flying off. So I turned around, laughed at her, and asked, "Is that all you got?" with a eating grin. She then went and got a bigger metal spoon. My mom stopped the car and told little me to get out. So I did. She drove 20 feet up the road, but to little me I thought she was driving away forever. I definitely stopped being a little it after that. And never forgot. I think I was about 7. And she never really punished my siblings and I beyond grounding. So I must have been really bad that day lol. Spanked with TV remote, which led to Sony being imprinted on my butt. I had a loaf of bread thrown against the wall when she came home from shopping one time. My mom was patient and indulgent. But that bread hitting the wall was both hilarious and terrifying, as it was her way of letting me know I had ducked up. She never does. It goes to 1.5, 1 1/3, 1 1/4 and so on. Bold of you to assume that my mom care about me. She kicked down my room door, grabbed my hand and locked me out of the house for an hour. Are glad to see child abuse is doing so well these days. I was getting worried there for a sec. My mom was a pushover at 0. Now when she got to 3 is a whole different ass whoopin'. She didn't count backward and she usually never made to 2 without the wooden spoon already being swung at my punk ass. Oh, I have a story about this. At this time my sister and her family lived with me. One night my niece wanted to spend the night in my room. It was getting pretty late and she was bouncing off the walls, so I told her I'm going to count to 3 and she just kept jumping on the bed. 1.2. Then she asked while still jumping on the bed what happens at 3, and I kid you not, as soon as I said 3 her mom comes and grabs her and she ends up sleeping in with her parents. To this day one of my favorite stories with the most perfect timing. Edit. My sister was not happy at all to say the least. Mind nailed my half-sister's clothes to the floor after counting to 0. She was found unfit to care for children soon after I was conceived, and whoever my biological father is didn't want me. Probably the doctor who I'm told is my father, but that's another story. I've tried to take her in many times as she has been homeless since her mother, my maternal grandmother of course, passed away, but she has issues I feel she has no control over. Back to the OP question though. My half-sisters were told to pick up their clothes and dolls and whatnot, and once the countdown was over they were nailed to the floor. Not my half-sisters. The clothes and toys of course. My half-sisters have not referred to her as mom as long as I can remember. Rather always by her first name. I hope she's okay out there, because no matter what she can be a wonderful person when her mental illness and alcoholism do not interfere, and the agnostic bastard son should not be the one who worries when the perfect Christian sisters do not. My wife got to 0 with my son. What happened? My wife was so frustrated that my son didn't listen that I got punished and didn't have sex for a month. You are going to meet your ancestors. Belt comes out. My mum used to throw her slipper. You could run down the hall, that ducker would follow you out the room like a homing missile. 3, 2, 1, 0.1 and 1 stroke 5, 1 and 1 stroke 4. The decimals got smaller and smaller. I never saw 0. I'm the youngest in my family, but apparently I had a younger brother that let mom get to 0. I'm skeptical though. I can't even find any pictures of him. Your parents counted down? My mom counted up 1-3. I never let her make it to 3 cause I knew she would factory reset me, lol. I love this story, but when my brother was a kid he wouldn't get into his car seat one day while we were driving around. My mom finally started to count, made it to 0 and he didn't get into his car seat. She drove a couple minutes out of the way to the police station, locked us in the car, and got an officer from inside. The officer told my little brother if he didn't listen to my mother he'd be forced to arrest my little brother for breaking the law. Scared the it out of him. He got right into his seat after that. She shouted Happy New Year.